Good morning, everybody. Or I like to say, good morning, you all, which is a cross between Southern language and Unitarian, I guess, just to get the message out. For those of you who are here in the sanctuary, please be advised that this service is being streaming on YouTube and streaming on Zoom. So watch your language and all that. To those of you who are watching this streaming service, we're glad to have you, but would rather, of course, have you in the sanctuary in person. Also, let me remind you that we do have a and post-service Zoom event, which also runs from the YouTube stream of the service, so you can access that either from the YouTube directly or from the Zoom service. Also, these services are available in recordings afterwards on YouTube. So if you particularly like the service or you missed part of the service, go home, go onto YouTube, and you can find it. Please make sure that you read the announcements in your printed order of service. That's what the ushers are giving them out for. Especially be sure to read the weekly events that are sent to you, that are emailed out to you every Thursday, as well as the Unigram and the website. I urge you to keep our website, that means your website, open as a tab on your internet browser so you can kind of keep up with what's happening. While you're with us today, please practice social distancing and mask wearing according to board-approved guidelines. We do not want you to take chances. We don't want to lose any of you or your loved ones. I want to make an announcement about flowers. We do have a flower program here to where you can sign up to bring flowers for the sanctuary. And today, unfortunately, we don't have any. Nobody signed up for today. So all you got to do is read the events or the website and you'll find out what to do. You just send an email to worshipchair@uucolumbia.org. Yeah. And we'll put you on the list. So please do that. All you got to do is bring your own flowers. Doesn't cost you anything except whatever the flowers might cost you. Next announcement. The month of November is the month for giving to the Unitarian Universalist Service Committee, Guest at Your Table. You remember this from the annual program. This is UUCC's annual intergenerational program to raise support for and awareness about key human rights. UUCC, we have contributed generously over the years to this program. So read more about this in your order of service, our website, the Unigram, and make sure that you make any donations that you can on the website. Now, this time you will find special offering envelopes, if you see them in the chairs around where you are. They're distributed here, so if you're writing a check and including it in there, please indicate on the memo line UUSC-GAYT, guests at your table. On the website, there's the link that says donate. So, or you can, of course, send a check. Outside, after you leave, and we do want you to go outside after the service, there is a table on the patio where you can learn more. It says GAYT guests at your table, so you can learn more there. Also, just to let you know in advance, UUCC will be involved again this year, and this is coordinated by the Social Action Committee, in Families Helping Families. That's where we adopt families and take them items of need during the Christmas season. Items will be delivered by mid-December, so plan on seeing that advertised a little bit more sometime in the next few weeks. And now, let's center ourselves for today's service and remember to silence all electronic devices as we listen to the prelude.
Our opening music today comes from the Prison Music Project. Zoe Bookbinder is a singer-songwriter, activist, and advocate for transformational justice in California. In 2010, they started a songwriting and music workshop in New Folsom Prison. And it blossomed into a years-long collaboration with a number of poets, writers, rappers, and singers that were incarcerated men in California. It evolved into the Prison Music Project, which was produced by major folk singer-songwriter Ani DeFranco. You can learn a lot more about this amazing project and everyone who participated by looking up theprisonmusicproject.com or going to Righteous Babe Records. Our opening prelude is from this album, and it's called Nowhere But Barstow in Prison. The words were written by Spoon Jackson, who is a man who's been incarcerated for over 40 years and is a poet and a writer. And he collaborated with Ani DeFranco, you will hear performing his words.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Anna. Please stand and join me in the congregational covenant as printed in your order of service. Love is the doctrine of this congregation. The quest for truth is its sacrament, and service is its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge and freedom, to serve others in community. This do we covenant with one another. Thank you. Please be seated. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Columbia. My name is Richard McLeod, and I am your service leader of the day. Our minister is the Reverend Stephen Robinson, and on those Sundays when Stephen is not in the pulpit, we provide other interesting guest speakers, and today is one of those days. Unitarian Universalism is a diverse and non-creedal religion. We are a covenantal religion, which means that we don't have to believe the same in order to treat each other the same with respect, equity, compassion, and dignity. Our community is based on deeds, not creeds. As Unitarian Universalists, we side with love, embracing all people regardless of age, color, race, socioeconomic status, physical ability, or religious background. We are a welcoming congregation, which means we also embrace LGBTQ individuals. We encourage everyone to wear name tags so that we may know each other better. Board members wear green name tags, and they always welcome your comments, questions, and suggestions. Would the members of the Board of Trustees please stand so you can be recognized for just a moment? Thank you. Now, at this time, we'd like to recognize any guests or visitors who are with us today. Amelia is going to bring around the microphone, so wait till he gets there with it. If you are willing and able, please rise and share with us your name, where you're from. And if you have any guests with you, please introduce them also. And please wait, stand up or raise your hands and wait for Emilio to come around.
Hi, I'm Beth Struble with Meals on Wheels, and I look forward to speaking with you in a little bit. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, welcome, Beth.
Hi, I'm Joel Collier, and I'm from here in town, but new here in town, so I'm just visiting and here to see Mckenzie speak. So.
Terrific. Welcome, Joel. Glad to have you. I remember the first time that Linda and I showed up and made that same speech. First time here. Anybody else? When we are further along in our recovery from this pandemic, we will take time to actually stand and greet each other. But until then, I'll just tell you that you're welcome to stay and enjoy your conversation and your fellowship time outside after the service. But one of these days, we'll get back to having refreshments and conversation in the social hall. So just until then, just kind of look forward to it. Today's chalice lighter is Janae Walton. Janae will tell you more about herself, so I'll try not to spoil that, but she's been very much a contributing member here for a while.
Hello, I'm Janae Walton. I'm currently at Midlands Tech and in the process of transferring to Columbia College to study social work. I visited the UU for the first time in 2017. Since then, the UU has become my spiritual home, and I'm very grateful for the people that I've met here and the community that I've found.
Spirit of light and life, come unto us. Well done. Thank you, Janae. You know, as I mentioned, today is one of those days when Stephen is not in the pulpit, and so we have a special guest speaker, which we do frequently. Today is Ms. Mackenzie Scott, and you will recognize her name and her person because she is also a very active member and actually on the staff here. She is a graduate of the University of South Carolina. She is a teacher in somatic practices as like yoga and embodied mindfulness. And she is a leader within the Columbia Resilience community. She can be found on Sundays, usually hanging out with the youth as a religious education assistant here at this church. Mckenzie has had 2 training intensives from IIRP, which is the International Institute for Restorative Practices, on facilitating restore circles in the restorative justice format. They plan to gain more experience with facilitating circles through Indigenous knowledge and social work. Mackenzie, opening words.
Our opening words today are from Tony Cade Bambara, and they are, "The role of the artist is to make the revolution irresistible." I found this quote in the book Pleasure Activism by Adrienne Marie Brown. And I also have the delight of sharing our story for all ages this morning. And I'm going to tell it from up here because it really is for all ages today. And I will have a special message for our 18 and younger people here. And this is from the book Restorative Circles in Schools, a Practical Guide for Educators. So in this story, a restorative practices specialist was invited by a school to do a session with a 4th grade class in Michigan. Bullying had become prevalent in the class, and a variety of attempts had been made to deal with the issue. The walls were covered with posters warning against bullying. The students had written essays about the issue, and experts had been called in to talk about the dangers of bullying, but nothing had made a difference. No one had actually addressed the issue head on with the active involvement of the children. The restorative practices specialist came into the class and arranged the students into a circle. The teacher and principal of the school were also present. The specialist started the circle with an icebreaker, a simple go-around question that gave the children an opportunity to express something about themselves, an activity that didn't feel threatening. He asked, "What is something you like to do in your free time?" By answering the question, the children began feeling comfortable talking to one another in the circle. Then the facilitator gave each child a colored ribbon and asked the students to answer the questions, who in your life has influenced you in a good way to make you the good person you are today? What did they give you? These questions were more personal but positive. The idea was to create a connection ceremony. Students talked about their grandparents or their parents, a teacher, friend, or coach, and said that that person had given them qualities like courage, love, and respect. After each student spoke, they tied a ribbon onto the growing string of colored ribbons, and later they hung this symbol of connection in the cafeteria. After that go-around, the restorative practices specialist felt confident enough to begin addressing the deeper problems plaguing the class. He asked, "How do kids treat each other in this classroom?" Answers were short but honest, as students spoke in turn. Bad. Kids are mean. There's name calling, and people don't respect each other. The next question was, how do you personally feel affected by this behavior? Students responded that they felt hurt, angry, and scared. Finally, for the next round, the specialist asked, who is strong enough and brave enough to admit that they had a part in this? By this time, some of the children were comfortable enough to begin admit their part in the bullying. The last question really hit home. Who needs to say something to help make things right? Now some of the students apologized for bullying other kids in the classroom. A few children who hadn't bullied anyone apologized too. They said they were sorry they hadn't stopped the bullying, that they'd watched it happen, or that they had fed into it by laughing or egging it on. Some students cried and emotions ran high. The circle ended with all of the students making a commitment to stop behaving in a bullying way. They also promised to do something to stop bullying when they saw others doing it by confronting the bullies or telling a teacher when it was happening. The circle itself was powerful, and in the ensuing days, it became clear that the children were keeping their commitments. Bullying in that class simply stopped. And encouraged by the result, the principal of the school implemented regular circles for each class. The facilitator reported that in 1 year, the school reduced its discipline referrals by 70%. So I'm excited to let the people who are 18 and younger here today know that you have the opportunity to go out to the side patio with Scott and Nancy to make your own chalices, which is what you'll be doing all this month if you're not here today and you're on screen. And I hope that you will also get to see how this chalice is a tool for creating your own ritual and for celebrating the ways that you are special and good.
And before we move on to the candles of community, I'd like to share the musical meditation. I'll invite you to participate with me today as you feel comfortable. If you'd like to just sit and listen, please do. Otherwise, I invite you, if you can, place your hand over your heart and take a moment just to feel your heartbeat. If you can, center yourself, relax your jaw, release your shoulders, and breathe naturally. And if you'd like to join me in moving your hand in a circle around your heart, and as you hear the melody to this song, if you would like to join in humming, I invite you to do so. Circle round for freedom, circle round for peace, for all of us imprisoned. Circle for release. Circle for the planet. Circle for each soul. For the children of our children, keep the circle whole. Circle round for freedom, circle round for peace. For all of us imprisoned, circle for release. Circle for the planet. Circle for each soul. For the children of our children, keep the circle whole.
Thank you, Anna. That was beautiful. It's now time for our candles of community. This is a time where we share with each other joys and concerns that we may have. If you have a significant personal joy, sorrow, or concern you would like to have shared from this pulpit, please email or phone our administrator by noon Friday. And if you would like to speak for yourself before service begins, you can pick up a candle in the foyer as you come in. And then I will ask you when it's time to come up. Now, for those of you on streaming, on the YouTube or on the Zoom, if you have a joy or concern you'd like to have expressed, just, again, call in to Andrea and we'll read that for you from the pulpit. This week we don't have any. Nobody wrote into Andrea about any extra joys and concerns. But those of you who have taken a candle as you came in, would you please come forward now and tell us about your candle? Deb?
I'm Deb Matherly and have three things to share. One, Barbara Smith is in North Carolina right now doing her show Ivy Row last night and today, and that's kind of a triumph for her one-person show. Second, a couple months ago, I mentioned that my niece gave birth to her daughter Olivia at 24 weeks, and she's now gone from 2 pounds to 4 pounds, but is having some issues with retinopathy, which is apparently a problem. So it's a joy and a concern. And my oldest grandson, Gavin, will be 21 this week. And it's a joy, but also a concern that he and his father have been on the outs for years. So hoping that we can get some reconciliation this coming year. So thank you.
Good morning. I light this candle today for Ron, Ronnie, Ronald Farr, who passed away last Sunday. He wasn't much of a golfer, but he was a hell of a nice guy. Hopefully when he gets to the gate, somebody will be on their coffee break and they'll let him right on in.
Well said, David.
Good morning again. I'm Bruce. Just saying thank you again for everyone's cards and keep them coming in. Nick loves them. And just in brief, I know I spoke a lot, but maybe some people don't understand. Nick has a mutated gene in his body. AML is acute myeloid leukemia. He has what's called acute myeloid myeloblastic leukemia. And we just went for his 10th bone marrow biopsy since November 30th of last year. And they're called myeloblast, where the percentage is what's gone and what's there still. He was in his first remission and they're trying to put him in his second. He's 46% myeloblast, which means it's 46% gone, but the rest is still there. So continued on now with more home chemo, more IV chemo, and continues and continues and continues. But I think I've already said once, but I forgot that with his bone marrow transplant that they denied him, now they're bringing it back. And that's going to be months away, but if it does happen, we'll be gone for 4 months in Charleston to have the procedure and for the healing. And hopefully, if that works, it'll give him more time. But thank you all.
Thank you, Bruce. And I'll light one final candle for those joys and concerns. They're very private and remain silent in our hearts. Now, to ponder these joys and concerns, let's just pause for a moment of silent meditation. Okay. This congregation contributes to Share the Plate, where half of our cash collection on Sunday goes to local charities, which is a way for us to give back to the community we live in. This month's Share the Plate recipient is Meals on Wheels. And here to tell us a little bit more about it is Beth Struble. Come on up, Beth.
Good morning. I want to say thank you for allowing me to come share Meals on Wheels, Senior Resources mission. Again, this November, I joined many of you virtually last year, so I'm thankful to be able to come do this in person now. So Meals on Wheels has had many successes this past year, but we also have challenges that we face. We were speaking with many of Columbia's leaders this past week on how seniors in our community have faced many challenges of isolation and hunger this past year, and that hasn't gone away. It was there before, it's still there now, it's just increased. So over this past year, we've increased our services by more than 12%. We delivered 160,000 meals last year, which is about 600 a day. And these seniors in our community are choosing to age in their home. They want to age with dignity, and that's what we are trying to provide for them at Senior Resources. And we say it's more than a meal. So although we're providing that nutrition to keep them healthy and in their homes, we're also providing them home care. We're providing their furry companions pet food. We're listening to them. We're saying hello to them every single day with our volunteers and our staff. You have one of our top volunteers that is part of this congregation that's been with us for many years. And that hello, that friendly smile every day is truly what's keeping them healthy and in their home. So I want to say thank you for allowing me to stand up here and share our mission of providing these resources to keep our seniors healthy and in their home. And if you have any questions for me after the service, I'd be happy to answer any of them for you. So thank you.
Those of you here in the congregation, if you're contributing by check, just write Share the Plate on the memo line. And particularly to those of you on live streaming or on Zoom, please remember that you can contribute online by hitting the donate button on our website and following the prompts about where you want your donation to go. The website, uucolumbia.org. Will the ushers please come forward to receive the morning offering?
Our offertory music selection is the first movement of a sonatina for piano by Martha Muir. And this is performed by a woman named Tanika, who was one of my students in a program for piano study at Women's Correctional Institutions in Columbia, South Carolina. I could share so many stories about the women in this program, but for today, it suffices to say that music truly can bring people together, bring people towards their best selves. And I hope you enjoy hearing Tanika perform.
Well, it makes me want to get up and do a country dance or something. Thank you, ma'am. We receive these gifts with gratitude and appreciation as it demonstrates that we are truly a giving community.
Welcome, everyone. My name is Mackenzie Scott, and I am on staff here at the UU, and I am so glad to be here today to share with you about transformational and restorative justice. So I am an enthusiastic amateur in this field, but I'd like to share with you some of the turning points for me that really helped shift my views on justice and healing. What drew me onto this path was the sense of compassion and deep listening that I sensed from the people who I was learning from. Some of their names are Andy Eisenson, Adrienne Marie Brown, Marianne Kaba, Shira Hassan, the International Institute of Restorative Practices, and the Prison Yoga Project. And so much of the content that they pull from is from people who identify as people of color, Black, Indigenous, trans, queer, current and former drug users, incarcerated folks, and sex workers. It is so important to let your heart be touched by this work. And these methods are old and wise, going back to when we would sit around a campfire and form the original circles. And it's an honor to share with you about them today, and how people are modernizing these wise old methods. Restorative and transformational justice has been described as a systemization of how we treat each other when we love each other radically. So people often will ask, what's the difference between restorative and transformational justice? And you may have heard one or the other term, and you might hear them used interchangeably. Different people in the field have subtle different ways that they identify. But I'm going to give you a general idea of the difference that's key. But both restorative and transformational justice aim on the operate from a framework that aims to respond to harm with healing rather than punishment. Restorative justice is a little bit more on a small scale. We're thinking about the relationships and the interpersonal relationships of the people involved in an incident. The aim is to restore those relationships to safety and wholeness, realizing that some things cannot be restored when harm happens. The aim is towards growth and healing. Transformative justice takes a broader view and realizes that when a harm happens, it's not just the fault of the person who did the harm, but rather all the people in a community or space hold responsibility for upholding a norm or condition that allowed that harm to happen. So this can take us towards more of a preventative measure and towards holistic community health. Some of this could address something like systemic oppression or norms about keeping quiet when harm happens. You might remember that in the story with the fourth graders, some of the kids spoke up who were not actually bullying, but they stood up to apologize for not having said anything or stood up to the bullies. And this is a way that we change the norms around an incident of harm. And we can think really creatively here within this framework. This is about radically valuing and healing. Contrast restorative and transformational justice with the current dominant way of justice that we see in this culture, and of punitive justice, punishment-based justice. Also, you might hear the words carceral logic, if you want to throw in a good word there. And from that framework, when we have a criminal, we have a person who did a harm, that can equate to that person becoming a bad person, potentially even a criminal. And when a person does this, commits a harm, then they are now under a category of people who deserve punishment, who can no longer contribute to society in a meaningful way, and are basically disposable. Under carceral logic, if I was harmed by someone, then I would find healing through seeing that person who harmed me punished or hurt and suffering. So we are carefully taught that this is the way it works. And that's because this maintains a system in which some people can be disposable. The system is unsustainable because it never gets to the heart of the harm. And I meant to give a content warning for those here and at home to, if at any point you need to take care of yourself in any way other than just sitting here or continuing to listen, to pause, I encourage you to do so. And and I recommend looking more into the ways that the criminal justice system is unsustainable. But in a real-life example of restorative justice that I'm going to tell a simplified version of, we have a person who was coming back home from, let's say, a party or a bar, and they're not sober, and they run over a person who is a pedestrian, and she did not survive in this situation. Her family got together, chose a restorative practices process, and within that process, which I'm simplifying, at some point, the family and the person who caused the harm, as well as their support system, came together with a facilitator, and they addressed this problem in this incident and this harm. In restorative justice situation, it came out that the woman who was killed, who did not survive, she was the primary caretaker of a great aunt, and she was the only one who lived nearby, this great aunt. So not only was the family dealing with the grief of this situation, but they had an additional problem where they had lost a caretaker for another family member. In this process, the person who caused the harm was given the support to take the courageous step of actually being in a circle with the people who he hurt. And within this process, the family and the person who caused the harm was given the space to express their feelings. And at some point, an apology was given and received, as well as the opportunity for them to come up with a solution to the lack of having a caretaker. The man who caused the harm ended up voluntarily taking on some of the caretaking role. So, for this great aunt. So I find this example really fantastic because it shows, fantastic might not be the best word, I came up with that on the spot, but really showing the creative ways that restorative justice and transformational justice practices offers a space for deep expression of feeling and for the opportunity to create creative solutions to the harm. And it addresses the situation and the people within it all as valuable people who can be a part of the solutions together, including the people who received the harm. In a punitive justice framework, this often simply doesn't happen. This opportunity to come together, to be heard, to realize what other complex issues are coming up and harms that have happened. And there just are often there are a lot of dominoes that go into effect within the prison, within the punitive justice system that the people involved are not actively a part of. Things are happening to them. So, some restorative questions. I'd like to share some restorative questions that are part of the framework of this work. You may have noticed that in the 4th grade story, the specialist asked a few intentional questions to the 4th graders. And those were kind of creatively taken from traditional restorative practices questions. There are slightly different questions for the doer and the receiver of harm when there's a situation in which that is clear. So for the doer of harm, we ask, what happened? And what were you thinking about at the time? What have you thought about since? And who has been affected by what you have done? And in what way? And what do you think you need to do to make things right? For the receiver of harm, we might ask, what did you think when you realized what happened? What impact has this had on you and others? What has been the hardest thing for you? And what do you think needs to happen to make things right? So these are tools, and I carry around a little card with me that actually has the questions on either side. And I found them incredibly helpful for navigating incidents and times when someone is hurt and needing to share. You can use these questions in a variety of circumstances, from informally one-on-one talking with somebody to an intentional ceremonial circle, maybe where you're celebrating and connecting, to a formal conference where potentially you're addressing an incident that occurred in your community, in your school, or as an alternative to the prison system. You may have noticed that I didn't ask, why did you do that? And that's because people usually don't know why they did what they did. Most of the time, when we do something that's harmful, we did it from a place that was thoughtless or reactionary. And so, therefore, restorative questions tend to be non-blaming and open-ended rather than loaded and leading. And I would like to share another important tool that I've gained from this framework that talks about shame specifically. So we don't ask why people did something, because oftentimes when we are talking to someone about an incident of harm, it's important to realize that shame is probably present. And people are usually in the process of managing that shame. So, and I see this framework as a way to tie into transformative justice, to change some of the cultural norms for how we operate around shame. So, when we're in a restorative process, it's helpful to realize and be able to see and when someone is operating out of shame or managing shame, so that we can help them transform back into a place of self-worth. There is research on the human psychology of shame that backs up this modern form of restorative and transformational justice. Sylvan Tompkins and Nathanson were both researchers on human psychology in the 60s and 90s on biological affect. And they found that humans experience these natural biological occurrences that they named affects. And some of these affects are like joy and fear and interest and disgust. Natural biological occurrences. And they separated emotion. They said that emotion is the way that we interpret the biological experience. Shame was also named as one of the biologically occurring affects, but they found that shame plays a special role in how in regulating human behavior and relationships. They found that shame would occur when a person's positive affect was interrupted by a negative one. So, for example, a positive affect like joy being interrupted by fear or humiliation. The individual does not have to do something wrong, therefore, to experience shame. That person just has to experience something that interrupts a positive affect. And this offers a critical explanation for why a lot of people who experience harm and are in fact receivers of harm still carry with them a great deal of shame associated with it. And, shame is a critical social regulator, and it's often helpful to learn from and transform out of shame back into a positive affect of self-worth. For example, if I'm a kid and I think it's going to be really funny to tell a joke in class that I heard like an older cousin say, and I think it's going to be great. And I tell the joke and it's received terribly. And my friends are like, why did you do that? People are like, you're terrible, you're a bad person. Why did you say that joke that was harmful? Because I didn't realize that maybe that joke was fat-phobic or even racist, and I didn't realize it. In this situation, it would make a lot of sense that myself as a kid would be feeling a great deal of shame because a positive affect was interrupted by a negative one. But in this case, it would be a really helpful thing to learn how to transform out of that shame and see how what I said was harmful, and to learn from that. So that would be a situation in which someone actually did cause harm and experienced shame because of it, even if it was unintentional. So, which it often is. So Tompkins and Nathanson argue that we tend to manage this shame, this naturally occurring biological experience, in 4 main unhealthy ways. And this is the cultural norm that I was speaking to. I did have this cool little diagram, but in my excitement and nervous-sightedness this morning, I forgot it at home. So I'm going to explain it using my arms. So bear with me. So culturally, they found that we've created these emotional rules to navigate affects, especially shame. And they named this model the compass of shame. So when a person is on the compass of shame, they would be going in one of 4 directions. One of the directions is to withdraw, to isolate oneself. Another direction is to attack self. That could be self-harming, self-negative talk, even as far as something like suicide. On another end, my elbow, is avoidance through addiction, through distraction. And on the other end is attack other, through blaming, hurting, even as far as killing a person, externalizing that attack. So they argued that we have learned to navigate and manage the natural occurrence of shame in these 4 unhealthy ways. And they argue that a great deal of the violence we see in our world happens because of this unhealthy norm. So I know I've found myself on this compass, and I'm sure I wonder if maybe some of you are also thinking about that. And we tend to go towards one direction or maybe 2. That's our go-to movement. And however, luckily, they also did research on how to manage shame more healthily, to transform oneself back into a positive affect of connection, of self-worth. And they found that when people are listened to, when they are acknowledged and their feelings and story is validated, and when they are encouraged to express their affects, their feelings freely, and encouraged to do that people are able to transform this shame back into a positive. So, and I see some head nods, so yay, I'm glad I got that point across. I've been so nervous about trying to explain this. And this ties into why restorative justice and transformational justice works, even for cases of what we might call extreme harm. Because when we're given a space to be heard, when we're given a space to be validated, and when we're encouraged to do those things, then we can transform back into self-worth and back into feeling like members of society and our community that are able to contribute meaningfully. I'd like to share with you some wise words from the book Fumbling Through Repair, which is a really fantastic workbook on community facilitation, community accountability facilitation. In this book, I'd like to share this. Our promise to each other is not that we can always prevent harm. What we can do is be present to help each other get on a road towards healing when harms inevitably occur. We accompany each other. Thank you.
I want to share that our earlier musical meditation was Circle Round for Freedom by Linda Hirshhorn. And we'll be closing with Lean on Me by Bill Withers. Thank you to Kevin McKinney for joining on guitar. No pressure, but if you feel moved to move or to clap, don't hold back. Sometimes in our lives, we all have pain. We all have sorrow. But if we are wise, we know that there's always tomorrow.
As Aurora Levins Morales said, in order to build the movements capable of transforming our world, we have to do our best to live with one foot in the world we have not yet created. Thank you.
We extinguish this chalice at the end of our time here today. May its flame glow gently in our hearts and lead our paths as we leave this place.
May the blessings of truth be upon us. May the power of love direct us. And may the peace of this community sustain us till we meet again.
Thank you. This concludes our service. Larry Siegel, Dr. Siegel, are you here? I didn't see Larry. Did he ask anybody else to take attendance today? You got it done? Okay, I'm sorry, please excuse that, I just hadn't seen him. Anyhow, this concludes our service, and you're welcome to stay and visit outside and unmask at your option on the patio. Please visit the guests at your table, place, and stay for as long as you like. For those of you who are here in the sanctuary and those of you who are watching on YouTube streaming, we will see you next week right here. Thank you all. Good day.